There are 19 weapons in Doom the Dark Ages, and today we're going to be ranking all of them from worst to best from S to F. We've got a lot to get through today, so without wasting any more of your time, let's get started with the very first weapon we encounter in this game. Now, kicking off this list, we have the combat shotgun, and dude, I'm just gonna say this right now, the combat shotgun is easily one of my favorite weapons in any early game of any game I've ever played. This weapon hits like a fucking truck in the opening few levels of Doom the Dark Ages. It has incredible DPS, great rate of fire, and it absolutely destroys any fucking enemy you encounter in those early levels. However, my main issue with the combat shotgun is when you unlock the super shotgun, this weapon kind of becomes completely irrelevant. However, even with all of that said, there's still no denying that I've had plenty of fun with the combat shotgun, and it was an absolute blast to use. So, for all of those reasons, I'm going to put the combat shotgun in Epic. Now, coming up next, we have the super shotgun, and dude, I fucking love this weapon. The super shotgun in this game is basically a tank if you made it into a gun. It hits like a fucking truck, dude. It is one of the highest DPSs in this entire game. And when you combine that with just how versatile this weapon is, alongside its incredible rate of fire, it's really not that hard to see why this is most players' favorite weapon. I genuinely have zero complaints with the super shotgun in Doom the Dark Ages. I think it's fucking perfect. It's incredibly effective against every single enemy in this game, including the bosses. It's a great combat option when it comes to most of the encounters in this game, and it's easily my personal favorite way to live out the Doomslayer power fantasy. My only real complaint with the super shotgun is when it comes to super long range, it's kind of ineffective. However, when a weapon like this has so many pros, it's really easy to look past the cons. So for all of those reasons, I'm going to put the super shotgun in Ultimate. Coming up next, we have the Shredder, and this might be a bit of a hot take. In fact, this definitely will be a hot take. I think the Shredder is one of the weaker weapons in Doom the Dark Ages. Now, don't get me wrong, the mods on this weapon are great, you get a lot of options in gameplay, and the Ricochet fucking mod for the Shredder is so ridiculously fun to use. However, my main issue with the Shredder is the DPS, because it's incredibly fucking low. Like, dude, it is criminal how low the DPS is with the Shredder, and I know the Ricochet mod kind of makes up for it. And to give the Shredder a little bit more credit, the ammo capacity is fantastic, and the range is top notch. The fucking range with the Shredder is incredible. So, for all of those reasons, I'm going to put the Shredder in mid. Now, coming up next, we have the Impaler, and dude, honestly, where the fuck do I even begin with the Impaler? It's one of the best weapons in this game. The Impaler is so ridiculously cool because it quite literally can impale enemies from a distance, and the range on this weapon is quite frankly ridiculous. This weapon has incredible DPS, great versatility when it comes to using it in combat. My only real complaint with the Impaler is the ammo capacity, because it is kind of low and it would have been nice to get more shots out of this thing. But even with all of that said, it still is one of my favorite weapons in the game just because of how creative it is and how fun it is to use in combat. So for all of those reasons, I'm going to put the Impaler in Ultimate. Now, coming up next, we have the Accelerator, and dude, I'm just gonna say this right now, the Accelerator and the Cycler are easily some of my favorite weapons in this game. First of all, the rate of fire, ammo capacity, and heatwave mod with the accelerator makes this one of the best SMGs in this entire trilogy. And the versatility with the accelerator makes it a very easy to use option in almost every single combat scenario in this game. I was seriously carried through multiple sections of this game solely using the accelerator, and for that I have to commend this weapon. My only real complaint with the accelerator is it absolutely sucks when going up against armor. However, when a weapon such as the accelerator is this fucking good in every single department, it's kind of hard to find anything that's wrong with it. So for all of those reasons, I'm going to put the accelerator in ultimate. Now, coming up next, we have the Cycler, and just like the accelerator, I can't really find anything I don't like about the Cycler. This weapon is incredibly strong, with a DPS that destroys basically every single enemy and boss in this game. The ammo economy with the Cycler is extremely generous with a great rate of fire, incredible mods and upgrades which makes this weapon even better, and when you get into the rhythm of killing enemies, the DPS for the Cycler just goes through the fucking roof. My only real complaint with the Cycler is it doesn't really have as much versatility or variety when it comes to the accelerator. It's an extremely good weapon when it comes to medium and long range distance, however when it comes to close range it's quite easy to get overwhelmed. However, even with all of that said, I still think the Cycler is absolutely fantastic, which is exactly why it's going to go in amazing. Now, coming up next, we have the Pulverizer, and dude, I'm just gonna say this right now. The Pulverizer is easily my favorite weapon in this entire game. And I know that's gonna get people riled up. I know people are probably not gonna agree with that take. But the Pulverizer looks so fucking cool, has great rate of fire, and this weapon basically cleans every single fodder enemy in this game. Now, is the Pulverizer perfect? Does it have defects? Yes, absolutely. For example, the DPS with this weapon isn't that good at all. In fact, it's strangely fucking terrible. However, when the weapon looks this cool, when it has a fucking buff that turns the skulls into yellow skulls, I have to show the weapon a little bit of love because it's just so damn creative and fun to use. And something else I really want to comment on when it comes to the Pulverizer is how fantastic the ammo capacity is. It genuinely feels like you're shooting this weapon forever, and it just makes it even better. So for all of those reasons, I'm going to put the Pulverizer in ultimate. Now, coming up next, we have the Ravenger, and I'm just gonna say this right now that the Ravenger is fucking awesome. The Ravenger is basically the Pulverizer if the spread was shorter and it did more damage, which honestly makes this a fucking great weapon to use on individual enemies and bosses. The Ravenger is one of the best weapons in the game when it comes to consistent DPS because the ammo capacity is insane. This weapon has so much fucking ammo and the rate of fire is simply incredible. And when you combine that with the Blue Skull power-up, it just makes everything 10 times better and more badass. My only complaint with the Ravenger is I don't think it's anywhere near as chaotic or fun as the Pulverizer. However, even with all of that said, I still think the Ravenger is absolutely fantastic, which is exactly why it's going to go in amazing. Now, coming up next, we have the rocket launcher, and dude, I'm just gonna say this right now, the rocket launcher in this game is kind of mid. Now, don't get me wrong, this iteration of the rocket launcher is really cool and does a ton of damage. I mean, this weapon can quite literally heal you with splash damage, it's fucking awesome. However, there's something about the rocket launcher in this game that just feels kind of wasted. For example, I don't really see why you would use this over something like the Ravenger or the CHAINSHOT. It really does seem and feel like an inferior option in every single way. And when you combine that with the slow rocket projectiles, it just kind of makes this weapon feel kind of crappy. But to give the weapon a little bit of credit, it does have that splash damage health mod, which does give it a step up. So for all of those reasons, I'm going to put the rocket launcher in epic. Now, coming up next, we have the grenade launcher, which is basically the rocket launcher, but slightly worse. I don't like the grenade launcher for multiple reasons. I think it's one of the worst long-range weapons in this entire game. It's a weapon that has great DPS, a decent rate of fire, and can take out armor pretty decently. However, my main issue with this weapon is it's the only weapon in this entire game that actually damages you. And when you couple that with slow projectiles, it makes using this weapon on nightmare difficulty a fucking nightmare. I can quite confidently say this is the only weapon in this entire game I really don't like. And if you do like this weapon, I can definitely see where you're coming from. However, in my opinion, I genuinely believe every other long-range weapon in this game is superior in virtually every single way. So for all of those reasons, I'm going to put the grenade launcher in disappointing. Okay, buddy, now I cannot wait to talk about the CHAINSHOT in Doom the Dark Ages, because this weapon is peak. In my opinion, this is objectively the best weapon in this entire game. Because not only is it effective at every single range in combat, not only is the DPS incredibly fucking high, with a great rate of fire and incredible versatility, but it's also good at cleaning fodder, is really fucking good against every single boss in the game, and just looks and plays incredibly badass. I fucking love the CHAINSHOT in Doom the Dark Ages. It's easily the game's most unique weapon and fun weapon in my opinion. And what makes this weapon even better is the fact that it fucking destroys armor so quickly. Honestly, I think this might genuinely be in my top 3 favorite weapons in the modern Doom trilogy. I think it's perfect in basically every single metric and easily is the game's most meta weapon. So for all of those reasons, I'm going to put the CHAINSHOT in ultimate. Now, coming up next, we have SERRET. And this one is really interesting to talk about because SERRET is probably the most controversial gameplay element of Doom the Dark Ages. SERRET has been criticized for having some of the most boring levels in this entire trilogy, and some of the most mind-numbing gameplay in this entire experience. However, I'd really like to combat this by saying that SERRET was incredibly fun for me and a great addition to this game. I genuinely believe every single level that includes SERRET is easily some of my favorites in this entire game. The occasional dogfights you have with the enemies are so ridiculously fun, and while yes, those turret sections can definitely be a little bit repetitive, that still doesn't take away from these levels being an absolute spectacle and easily some of the best content in this game. And with the future updates and patches, it's made these levels way better than they used to be, so I have to respect that. SERRET is a fucking legend in this game, and she will easily go down as one of the game's most iconic characters. So, for all of those reasons, I'm going to put SERRET's gameplay in mid. Coming up next, we have the ATLAN levels, and dude, I'm just gonna say this right now, the ATLAN levels are easily some of my favorite levels in this entire modern trilogy. What makes the ATLAN so fun for me is the melee combat and gunplay, which makes an already fun gameplay loop even more badass and fun. Dude, words cannot truly describe just how fun it is to beat the fuck out of these giant titan demons. And man, we have to talk about the Old One boss fight. I know I forgot to include it in my boss tier list when I covered all of the modern games, but let me atone for my sins and say right now that this boss fight is not only ultimate tier, but one of the most badass set pieces in this entire trilogy. The ATLAN MECH is an absolute powerhouse. He's incredibly fun to use, has a great arsenal of weaponry, and replaying those levels will never get old, and dude, I really hope they come back in the DLC. So for all of those reasons, the ATLAN MECH is gonna go in fucking ultimate, baby. This weapon is fucking awesome. Now, finishing off this list, we have the BFC, the big fucking crossbow dude. And let me just say this right now, the BFC, it looks badass, it looks really cool, I really love the concept here. However, there's something about this weapon that feels kind of lackluster or something that's missing. And I think the reason I feel that way is you can't really use this in a creative or tactical way like you used to do with the BFG. For example, in Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, you could use the BFG in multiple creative ways in gameplay, which made the ultimate weapon feel more creative and unique and gave you more variety in how you could use it in combat. However, in Doom the Dark Ages, the BFC is basically an atomic fucking bomb that tears every single enemy to ribbons. And while yes, it's badass, it's creative, it's incredibly satisfying to tear an entire horde of enemies to crumbles, I just kind of wish you could use this in more of a creative way. So for all of those reasons and countless more I probably didn't say, I'm going to put the BFC in amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching the video, I greatly appreciate it. I'm not gonna lie guys, recently I've been a little bit depressed. Like, I recently had a death in the family and it's been really hard to navigate. It's kind of fucked me up recently, I'm not gonna lie. So if you could show this video a like, a hype, a fucking subscribe, I would greatly appreciate that shit. Thank you very much. And I genuinely am sorry there was no video last week. I just had to process some things in my life. It's not every week you fucking lose your grandfather, man. It fucking sucks. But anyway, guys, I'm not gonna end this video on a negative note. If you enjoyed the video, great. If you didn't, fantastic. And hopefully I'll see you next week. Have a wonderful day, guys, and please take care of yourselves. See ya.